America's deadliest fighter was born with a fatal flaw, until the British performed the impossible surgery that changed history forever. This aircraft shattered the Luftwaffe's dominance. It became an American icon, the ultimate symbol of Allied victory. Yet there's a truth rarely told in textbooks. Its creator wasn't born in America. He came from Germany. He'd previously worked for the very nation he would soon help defeat. This is how a displaced engineer and a British innovator forged the aircraft that decided the war's outcome. Nazi bombers ruled the skies above London. The RAF fights desperately, hemorrhaging aircraft. Their losses exceed production capacity. Frantic, Britain's procurement team arrives in New York clutching funds and one urgent question for American manufacturers. What fighters can you deliver immediately? They approach North American aviation. The British want P-40 Warhawks, dependable, combat-proven, but thoroughly average. Company chief Dutch Kindleberger glances at his lead designer, Edgar Schmued. Schmued brings an unusual background. German-born, he fought with Austria in the Great War. He witnessed German aviation's early triumphs. He understands their engineering philosophy intimately. And he despises the outdated P-40. That design is finished, Schmued declares. Build that now, and Luftwaffe pilots will tear through it effortlessly. Schmued proposes something audacious. Reject the P-40 entirely. Allow him to create something revolutionary, something streamlined, something cutting through atmosphere like a razor blade. The British delegation explodes with frustration. They lack time for experimental prototypes. They require combat aircraft now. So they deliver an impossible challenge. An absurdly compressed timeline. You get 120 days. Unless the prototype emerges from your factory in 120 days, we cancel everything. 120 days. 16 weeks to conceive a fighter from nothing. Schmued's engineers work around the clock. They camp beneath their drafting tables. Schmued fixates on aerodynamic resistance. He demands minimal drag coefficient. He implements revolutionary laminar flow wing technology. Traditional wings feature maximum curvature forward. Schmued shifts peak thickness rearward. This minimizes turbulent airflow. It slashes drag dramatically. Mathematically, it's brilliant. September 9, 1940. Just 102 days elapsed. They finished 3 weeks early. The prototype is stunning. It radiates speed while motionless. But aircraft require power plants, and here's where disaster strikes. American engineers mount the Allison B-1710 engine. Adequate for ground attack roles or low-altitude missions, but missing one essential element, a dual-stage supercharger. Test pilots adore the handling. Responsive. Graceful. Britain immediately orders 300 units. They christen it Mustang. When the first Mustangs reach England in 1941, RAF pilots climb into combat against German fighters. Their enthusiasm vanishes instantly. Above 15,000 feet, the Mustang becomes helpless. The engine starves. Power drops catastrophically. It wallows. In aerial combat, altitude means survival. Whoever climbs highest strikes first. Messerschmitt and Focke-Wulf pilots simply ascend to 20,000 feet and dominate. They mock the Mustang. It cannot reach them. The RAF feels betrayed. They possess a magnificently designed airframe wrapped around an inadequate power plant. They assign Mustangs to reconnaissance missions, photographing targets, strafing locomotives, low-altitude attacks. It's humiliating. The world's most advanced fighter frame reduced to a tactical nuisance. Meanwhile, the U.S. Army shows zero interest. They prefer P-47 Thunderbolts and P-38 Lightnings. Schmued's masterpiece sits ignored. Then, at Hucknall Airfield in England, RAF test pilot Ronnie Harker takes a Mustang up. He experiences the aerodynamic excellence. He feels the control precision. He lands, exits the cockpit, and approaches the Rolls-Royce engineering team. He tells them, "This aircraft isn't defective. It's simply waiting for the right heart." He summons Stanley Hooker, Britain's premier engine designer, the genius behind the Spitfire's power. Hooker examines the Mustang, then studies the Rolls-Royce Merlin 61 power plant, the engine driving the Spitfire Mark IX. The Merlin 61 features a two-stage supercharger. It devours high-altitude air effortlessly. Hooker contemplates an impossible idea. The Mustang, German-American design. The engine, British engineering. Completely incompatible systems. Different measurement standards. Mismatched hardware. But what if? He gathers his team. Strip that Mustang's nose, he commands. We're performing open-heart surgery. They warned him it couldn't work. They predicted cooling failure. But Hooker refused to listen. He recognized that combining America's sleekest airframe with Britain's mightiest engine wouldn't just produce a fighter, it would create a legend. Rolls-Royce mechanics attempt the transplant. They've removed the American Mustang's forward section. They're forcing a colossal 27-liter V12 Rolls-Royce Merlin into space designed for something smaller. It won't fit. Like forcing a tiger into a birdcage. Cables snake everywhere. Tubing gets twisted. Engineers curse constantly. Failure means destroying a functional aircraft. Success might determine the war's outcome. Stanley Hooker observes the pandemonium. The primary obstacle isn't dimensions. It's thermal management. The Merlin runs extremely hot. Dangerously hot. Spitfires use wing-mounted radiators, but Mustangs feature an unusual configuration, a prominent ventral scoop. Hooker realizes something extraordinary. He calculates the scoop's physics. Incoming air cools the engine fluid. The air heats up. Hot air expands. When it expands, it must exit. If they engineer the exhaust duct properly, the escaping heated air functions like a miniature jet thruster. Engineers call this the Meredith effect. Rather than the radiator creating drag penalties, the heat actually produces forward thrust. Unplanned brilliance. Schmued had unknowingly designed the optimal cooling architecture, but required Hooker's power plant to unlock it. The union was complete. The Mustang X stood ready. Captain Ronnie Harker climbs aboard. He ignites the starter. The sound transforms. The previous Allison motor chugged softly. The Merlin snarls. A profound, guttural thunder that rattles the earth. He advances the throttle. The aircraft rockets down the runway. Harker pulls the stick backward. Normally at 15,000 feet, the Mustang would weaken. Harker climbs through 15,000. The engine keeps pulling. 20,000 feet. Still climbing strongly. 25,000 feet. He's entered Luftwaffe territory. He levels at 30,000 feet. He pushes maximum throttle. The performance figures are staggering. The original Mustang maxed at 390 miles per hour. This hybrid beast reaches 440 miles per hour. Faster climb rate. Higher ceiling. Superior fuel economy. Harker lands, leaps out, and reportedly shouts, "Forget everything else. Mass-produce only this aircraft." The Meredith effect gifted extra velocity from mere cooling airflow. Could this be World War II's most ingenious engineering solution? Word reaches America, reaching North American aviation. Edgar Schmued reviews the British test data. He grins. He always knew his airframe was flawless. It simply needed adequate power. But a massive logistics problem emerges. Rolls-Royce barely produces sufficient Merlins for Spitfires and Lancaster bombers. They cannot supply American forces too. An agreement forms. Merlin blueprints travel to Detroit, to Packard Motor Company. This moment decided the Axis defeat. Not through battlefield tactics, but industrial capacity. Packard transformed the handcrafted British engine into mass production format. They manufactured thousands monthly. The P-51B emerges. American structure, British soul, Detroit built. The ultimate hybrid weapon. It arrived perfectly timed because over Germany, catastrophe was unfolding. The U.S. 8th Air Force attempts daylight strategic bombing of Germany, but they're being massacred. The B-17 bombers are resilient, but they fly unprotected. Their fighter escorts, P-47s and Spitfires, have limited range. They must return at the German frontier when fuel depletes. The instant escorts withdraw, Luftwaffe predators attack. During 1 week, Black Week, in October 1943, America lost 148 bombers. 1,500 airmen dead. Commanders suspend operations. The casualties are unsustainable. They need a miracle fighter capable of reaching Berlin and returning. They examine the redesigned P-51 Mustang. They study the fuel efficiency numbers. They're skeptical. Verify those calculations. A general demands. Schmued had installed internal fuel cells behind the cockpit. Extremely risky. If struck, the pilot sits atop an inferno, but it grants phenomenal operational radius. With jettisonable wing tanks, the Mustang can fly 1,600 miles. It can escort to Berlin, engage for 15 minutes, then return home. March 1944. The bomber fleets launch again. German radar technicians detect the enormous formation. They alert the Luftwaffe. Hermann Göring, Luftwaffe commander, laughs confidently. He assumes the bombers are defenseless. He anticipates another easy slaughter. German interceptors climb toward the bombers. They spot escort fighters protecting them deep inside German territory. They assume these are short-range fighters that navigated incorrectly. Then the escorts jettison their external tanks. The silver fighters pivot into attack formation. German pilots freeze. They identify the silhouette. Not Spitfires. Not Thunderbolts. Mustangs. Over Berlin. Later, Hermann Göring admitted, "The moment I witnessed Mustangs above Berlin, I understood we'd lost." The Predator had become prey. But the Mustang wasn't finished with air superiority. It received a terrifying new assignment. A mission so deadly pilots named it the Suicide Run. By mid-1944, the P-51 Mustang accomplished what seemed impossible. It obliterated Luftwaffe effectiveness. German pilots were psychologically shattered. They understood that regardless of altitude or location within Germany, the Silver Hunters would locate them. General Eisenhower declared, "The Mustang delivered air supremacy." After dominating the skies, the Allies targeted ground forces. Mustang pilots received chilling new orders. Descend to treetop level and annihilate anything mobile. Mustang squadrons would drop altitude and prowl German territory like hunting packs. Their targets weren't aircraft. They sought infrastructure, locomotives, convoys, watercraft, bridges. The P-51 mounted 6.50 caliber machine guns. Firing simultaneously, they didn't merely penetrate, they shredded metal completely. Germany's rail system was the Nazi war machine's circulatory system. It transported armor, petroleum, and troops forward. Mustang pilots severed those arteries. Gun camera recordings from 1944 display locomotive after locomotive erupting in steam explosions. Extremely dangerous work. Flying 400 miles per hour at ground level meant one error, one power cable, one fortunate rifle shot, meant death. But it succeeded. By D-Day, Germany's army was immobilized. They couldn't reposition armor because Mustangs maintained constant surveillance. This strategy proved so devastating that German railway operators refused daytime duty. They operated exclusively at night. Yet the war continued. The Nazis unveiled their final technological gambit, the jet fighter. The Messerschmitt Me 262. We covered this aircraft in our Kelly Johnson episode. It flew 100 miles per hour faster than Mustangs. When Mustang pilots first encountered it, they were stunned. It appeared futuristic. No propeller. It moved so rapidly they couldn't track it with gun sights. The P-51, aerial champion, suddenly seemed antiquated. But Mustang pilots possessed something German technology lacked: numerical superiority and tactical cunning. They identified the jet's vulnerability. It was sluggish during takeoff and landing sequences. Mustang pilots developed a ruthless strategy: airfield ambush. They wouldn't engage jets airborne. They'd orbit German airfields like circling scavengers. The moment German jets lowered landing gear, vulnerable and decelerated, Mustangs would strike. Not aerial dueling, outright execution. Among these pilots flew legendary Chuck Yeager, future sound barrier breaker. He destroyed an Me-262. He demonstrated that piston engines could still defeat jets if pilots employed superior tactics. The Mustang maintained dominance until final victory. May 1945. Germany capitulates. The P-51 Mustang completed over 200,000 combat missions. It destroyed nearly 5,000 enemy aircraft airborne, the highest Allied fighter tally. But the Mustang's legacy transcends statistics. It represents international cooperation. Consider this. The fuselage was designed by a German immigrant who escaped to America. The power plant was engineered by the British mastermind behind the Spitfire. Production was executed by American automotive workers in Detroit. It embodied the perfect fusion of Allied innovation. While Nazis obsessed over racial purity and isolation, the Allies triumphed by combining their greatest concepts. Today, the P-51 Mustang remains the most prized warbird globally. When you hear that whistle, the signature shriek of its gun ports and the Merlin's roar, you're not just hearing an aircraft. You're hearing the sound that liberated Europe. The fighter nobody initially wanted. The aircraft built in 120 days. The fighter with the inadequate engine. Yet ultimately, it became the decisive weapon. Edgar Schmued and Stanley Hooker demonstrated that sometimes individual components are exceptional, but their combination becomes unstoppable. If this story of incredible international engineering collaboration fascinated you, hit that like button and subscribe to WWII War Rewind for more untold stories from the war that shaped our world. History isn't just about battles, it's about the brilliant minds who changed everything.